Kate Mercer is the co-founder of Leaders Lab UK and the author of A Buzz in the Building: How to Build and Lead a Brilliant Organization. In today's conversation, Kate will help us uncover the essential shifts in leadership that are required as businesses evolve. So, if you've ever wondered why the management techniques that once worked for you suddenly seem inefficient, or how to get your team to take more ownership, this episode is for you. Kate, a very warm welcome to you. Can you start by telling us a bit about your journey and what led you to focus on organization development?
Okay, so many years ago, before I started to be a consultant, I actually worked for a very big blue chip company and was the training manager. So when I first went into business for myself, I thought I'll do training. I've got a whole range of training courses I can offer in leadership and personal skills. So I thought I'd do training, but over the years, I gradually became more disillusioned with training because you can run a very good training course and people come away all inspired and lit up and excited. And then they go back into the same old culture, the same old boss, the same old team dynamics. And it's like a bucket of cold water for them. They don't get to keep that buzz they had at the end of the training. And I began to realize that unless I actually worked with the leaders of the organization to impact the culture in the organization, nothing was going to change. So that led me into organization development.
Amazing. And you've also written a book, A Buzz in the Building. Um, so it's all about building and leading brilliant organizations. What inspired you to write it and who is it for?
Ah, right. Well, over the years, as I've started to work more with small and medium-sized organizations, more the medium end of that. Um, and I was quite having let go of many of my training skills, so I wasn't offering training so much. It really surprised me to find that many leaders of smaller organizations don't have some of the basic skills that I first learned through my blue chip company in the 1980s. um, and it struck me that it would be really useful to write a book encapsulating all the basic skills that I think are necessary to run a medium-sized organization. Um, because people who come up through small organizations don't get sheep dipped in the skills in the same way as people who come down through large organizations. So I was, quite surprised to find that many of the skills I thought were kind of basic leadership skills, people, when I gave them to them, acted as if I'd given them the keys to the kingdom. So it was fun. It's fun training people in those, fairly straightforward basic skills that people who come up through small businesses don't get access to.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And you've touched on a very important point as well about leadership, isn't it? Because a lot of the times it's just a word for people, isn't it? Um, and people know it as maybe there's certain things and certain elements to it, but until you dive deep into it, you wouldn't know exactly what leadership is about and what are the elements connected to it. And it's nice that you've captured it.
Yes, yeah. Leadership is often encapsulated in books about leadership as a kind of way of being, which it is. It's a mindset shift. To become a leader, you need to step up and become, regard yourself as responsible for the whole thing. But it's expressed in basic actions, basic management actions that those people I was talking about really didn't have access to. And that's really what I wanted to come down from the lofty heights of leadership to what does it mean day by day? How many meetings do you have? What do you actually say in those meetings? That kind of thing.
You work with a lot of SMEs going through growth, isn't it? So, what are some of the biggest challenges that leaders face in their businesses and as their businesses scale?
Okay, well, I generally work with the founders of businesses. So they've started a business and gone through the startup stage. And you can get through the startup stage with using almost your personal social skills. If you're the parent of a family, you treat your employees like your children. Um, if you're a nice person and you know how to be good to people, you treat them when you want to motivate them and so on. But those are skills that really run out of road when you move into growth, because you can't manage a larger group of people in the same way as you can manage 5 or 6 people around your kitchen table. And as soon as you're no longer a kitchen table business, you need to change your skills. And I think that many leaders don't notice that moment when they need to change their approach, and they soldier on trying to use the same skills and then wondering why it doesn't get the same results.
And that leads to my next question, because many leaders feel that the techniques that used to work suddenly doesn't work, and it's not effective anymore. So why does that happen, and what's the first step for fixing it?
I think because most people regard the skills you need when you're recruiting somebody, for example, an inexperienced leader of the sort I'm talking about will look for the right experience and skills, technical skills, and they'll look for a nice person. Somebody once actually said to me, I don't think you can go far wrong if you hire somebody from your old school. And I thought, that's not actually true. So sure, you want to hire nice people, but there's a third area you need to look at. So you need to look at experience and technical stuff. You need to look at whether they're generally pleasant and, will fit in with your team. But also, do they have the skills, the working personal skills? And if you don't have them yourself, you can't judge that. So actually, that's why it goes wrong. So you think this guy seems to have lots and lots of experience and lots of technical skills, and he seems like a really nice bloke, so he'll definitely fit in with the team. And then you discover that they don't know how to turn up on time, or they don't instinctively know how to deal with clients, or they don't dress appropriately, and it's very hard to change, to work out how to tell them what to do. So there's that third area of skills which inexperienced founder owners often aren't aware of.
In terms of the first steps that they can take, what do you think they need to take to fix these things?
Oh, very good. I think the first step when I get teams together is always to agree a set of ground rules. And any leader can do that. You can agree a set of ground rules. So if you take all the things that are irritating you about life with your team, like they don't turn up on time, for example, they don't come to meetings fully prepared, those you can write into a set of ground rules and agree them with the team. Now there's a health warning on that, because in this day and age, people are very sophisticated now in the way they weren't in the 1950s or whenever. You can't dictate ground rules to people. You have to agree them with them. And you might have to be more flexible. There might have to be a bit of a negotiation. You can't say you must come in at 9 o'clock and you must leave at 6 o'clock every evening. You have to kind of negotiate with people. But it's really, really important to have explicit agreed ground rules with people about how you work together. You can't simply assume that your basic principles and rules will apply to anyone else these days. You have to talk about it explicitly.
Absolutely. And what about accountability? How does that play a role? So, how can leaders shift their approach to ensure that the team take the right level of accountability and share the load as well?
Right. Well, what part of it I think is that jobs aren't very clearly defined these days. When you again, when with honourable exceptions, obviously, that there are recruitment people out there who do know how to define a job well, but there are many job advertisements I see are defined in terms of a list of activities you do. So you come, and then the job description gets longer and longer. it's a page of A4 and then you forgot a few things, so it's 2 pages of A4. And in the end, you're reduced to saying, well, anything else I ask you to do from time to time. If you manage people like that with a list of activities, they will never take full accountability because they're always reliant on you to tell them what to do and then to tell them whether they've done it right. So how I would define roles, and how I do define roles when I'm working with teams, is we work together to design the outputs of that role. And I'm talking 3 to 5 major areas of output. So, and defined in really, really simple, concrete terms so that you could explain them to a 12-year-old. So you define the area of output and how you measure it. And in the ideal world, the team will do all of that together so that you end up with a team who each knows what they're there to deliver and how it's going to be measured. Everybody else knows what everybody else is there to do and how it will be measured because they've all had a say in designing it. Then you've got a team that's knitted together really strongly. And there's no hiding from accountability then because they've all seen you agree to that output and that set of measurements. So that's the key thing.
And does that actually lead to why you see the organization and introduce it as a system? Because then everything and all the elements need to work together in order for it to be effective.
Yes. Yes. So clients will often start a conversation with me by saying, look, I've got some problems with my team. They're always at each other's throats. There's a lot of finger pointing. Those two over there don't get on very well. Could you just talk to them and see if you can get them to get on a bit better? And I always say, how clear is everybody about what the job is? Because if you start the first step with getting the jobs clear in the way I've described, not only do they end up crystal clear on what their accountabilities are, and everybody else is too, but it acts as a kind of Trojan horse for getting any personal animosity out. So in the process, they'll say, oh, I thought you were responsible for that. I've been really annoyed with you for years because I always thought that was your job. And they say, no, I thought you were responsible. And a lot of the personal discord in a team simply disappears. It doesn't always. Sometimes you're left with two people who genuinely don't get each other, in which case there's a different piece of work to be done. But more often than not, if you get the structure right, the systematic framework that underlies the team will work well together.
I think my next question actually links very nicely with what you just said. When the organizations scale up, when a business scale up, things will change, isn't it? Because suddenly things were small and now there are bigger responsibility, different types of responsibilities. So what leadership skills become essential that may not have been needed before?
Yeah, as you scale up, you need to step back from your organization. When you're that little kitchen table organization, you're in it. You are in it with the team. There's no you've got to get product or service out the door, get the money in. Everybody's just juggling like mad, and it's a wonderful, exciting time. As the organization grows and you get more people working with you, it starts to develop a life of its own. And one of the key mindset shifts for the leader is to step back and let it develop. So as people start to want to take accountability, let them. Define roles in the way I've described, and then leave them to get on with it. And that's the main mindset shift. And what that means is you will feel as if you're not in touch with what's going on. So then you need to develop the skills, a framework of, here we're back to frameworks, a framework of meetings, which you meet everybody regularly, one-to-one meetings with each of your team members every month to talk about how they're doing and also what they're doing, and make sure everybody's okay. So you have a new framework of meetings where you don't work day by day with them, checking on every activity, but you check in regularly. And business leaders, somebody said this to me recently, is that I'm really not comfortable with one-to-one meetings. They find that a very scary thing. They're happy with patting somebody on the back or, taking them out for a beer to celebrate, but they're not happy having an in-depth meeting once a month talking about how you're doing and what you're doing with somebody, and then letting them go again. So those are the main, they are very basic skills, Pasha. These are things that is, like I said, it's the sort of what we used to do in my big blue chip company when I was working in my last proper job. Um, they that was the first thing you were taught, basic supervisory skills. So although I talk about leadership is expressed in basic good supervision and management and
Yeah, you're
administration.
absolutely right. And these are, although these are the basic ones, somehow they can easily become complex as well, isn't it? Because especially, let's take the very first example that you gave, as to as a leader, you need to step back and let others do things. It's I think it's in many cases it becomes very hard because in your head you know all the ins and outs of everything, and you're really afraid of letting go. But then equally you know that it is much bigger now, and you have to let go and let others to sink in to understand it and do their job and feel it in the way that you feel it.
Yes. Yes, and that's a different set of skills completely from the startup. And you will find people who are much more suited to that phase of a business. I have a business leader I'm working with at the moment who's actually far more suited to the startup phase of a business. He's actually, now his business is in a quite a mature stage and his son is trying to run it. He's actually having great difficulty staying out of things and letting his son do his job. Um, and he knows it. He knows that he's a natural born entrepreneur. We've said to him, you really need to go and start up something else.
Um, um, what are the actually, because of course you've worked with a lot of different organizations, is there any like a real world example that you can provide us where you um, helped the company to successfully transform their leadership and management approach with your guidance?
Yeah, one comes to mind a couple of years ago is one of my favorite ever projects, actually. A couple of young guys started a PR business, and they did incredibly well from the beginning. They did actually have a very good market and they really knew their business. Um, and they gathered a couple of people around them. This is the kind of kitchen table stage of the whole thing. Actually, this was all during lockdown, so they did it did it remotely. But they had a few people working for them. Um, and uh, when I came on the scene, they had made one classic mistake early on, which was to go to the world of bigger business and hire somebody they thought would help guide them through this early stage. It's a very common mistake with very tiny businesses. They think they need, mum or dad to come and help them through that early stage. Of course, a year further on, they're feeling, hungry for work. They're much more confident, and this person is inadvertently, and it's not their fault, but they've come from a bigger business, and they're trying to stabilize everything and put in processes and procedures, and over engineering the business. So the first thing we had to do, and I didn't have anything to do with it, but I said, we really can't work with you and your team until this person has left. So the first thing they had to do, and it's really uncomfortable and unpleasant, and they hated doing it, the person had to leave. Then we got those two together and one other person, the third member of the senior team, and we worked through roles and accountabilities in that team. Actually, we got an awful lot done because we finished early and they said, can we just do the roles and accountabilities for the rest of the team, please? So we did that too. So we got roles and accountabilities for the entire organization, a, um, a review of their values and behaviors they expected in the business. So we set up that group set of ground rules I'm talking about. And yeah, and then out of that grew a largish action plan, which they were to undertake. And one of them said, I asked for a testimonial for a LinkedIn recommendation a few months later. And one of the things he said is, as a result of implementations coming out of that meeting, our agency has never been more effective and organised. I was really
Wow,
pleased with that
this
one. So, and they have gone from strength to strength. They're doubling in size, and they are really doing, doing really well. And that was catching in the very early stages one bad mistake, which is a very common mistake to make. So getting that rectified, and then putting in a very simple infrastructure as a platform for growth.
wow, this is so fascinating, and it's certainly rewarding as well, isn't it? Um,
Oh, I'm so proud of them. I can't tell you. They're like like my family. I just watch their growth with fascination. I'm so pleased of them. I'm proud of them. And they really took it on. They were really, really good at
wow,
implementing it.
it's so fascinating. Though the credits to you as well, of course, because that surely shows how amazing you are and how good you know what you're doing. So well done to you.
Thank you.
I have one more question about employees this time because we covered a lot about leaders of the business. What about the employees of the business? How does employee ownership impact the company culture? So now we're shifting it more towards them. So how does it impact the company culture, and what should leaders do to make sure it works effectively for everyone?
That's a really interesting question because I think a lot of people who decide to go employee owned, I mean, it's primarily a way for leaders to hand over their company and to often to exit the company. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they want to become part of the employee owned entity as well. But it's primarily a change in ownership, a legal and financial entity. Um, and of course, a company can go employee owned, and if the leader stays, nothing much changes. But I think something that's really important, the need for structure in employee owned companies is even greater because there's a danger that if you sell to the employees, and I've seen this happen, employees in the early stages start to think, well, we deserve to be involved in every decision, for example. We want to check on everything that's done. You mustn't make leadership decisions without telling us. And one of the early understandings that needs to happen is that leadership is still leadership, middle management is still middle management, the workers are still, doing the operational work. It's important to realize that everybody has a role and an accountability and needs to deliver that. And only when everybody is doing that, then the whole organization, the whole organism works well. Um, so that's one of the early stages. This isn't just a free for all. This isn't just, democracy gone mad. This is you actually need more structure and better management structure in an employee owned company. And it takes, I think, people who have been employed for many years quite a long time to realize that they can have a voice. You have to use the structures, use the infrastructure, but you can really have a say in how your company is run. Not by taking over someone else's job, but by doing your job really well and looking for continual improvement in that job, and for then using the structure that exists in the company to get your ideas right back up to the leadership. And a good employee owned company will make sure those structures and pathways are open. So yeah, it's I think it's easy to regard flipping to employee ownership as the answer to everything. We're employee owned, it'll all just work. No, you have to work very equally hard on the infrastructure and on the ground rules and on the rules of engagement between people, because they all have a right to say now. So you need to have rules of engagement whereby you can hear everybody's voice.
Absolutely, absolutely. You keep touching on very, very important points, things that, again, these might sound obvious, but clearly they're not. So that's actually very important.
No, no, that's right. And I think the one of the things that bugs me, I don't know if it's right to interject this here, but one of the things that slightly bugs me is that people know they need to work on their marketing, their finances, their brand, their outward impression. They know they need to keep people happy in the organization, and they need to make sure they're well cared for, but they don't work on the organization itself. And so I often see smaller businesses in particular, especially with people who have left corporate life. They will say things to me like, I didn't leave corporate life just to work, just to have more structure around me. But you need structure as a business grows. You just don't need corporate structure. I can completely concur with that opinion. You don't need heavy red tape and bureaucracy and corporate structure, but you do need a light level of infrastructure in an organization. Otherwise, it implodes, it just collapses in on itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, if there is one mindset shift or habit that you would encourage every leader of an organization, especially a growing SME, to adopt, what would that be?
Oh, well, it would be easy to say, wouldn't it? Take coaching, get outside views on things. I think that's true. I think there's a level of self-awareness that's necessary. I think owner founders do tend to get very bogged down in the mechanisms of starting the organization, to the point that years later, when the organization has started to grow away from them, they don't notice the shift. So keep your head out of the swamp, the muck and the bullets. Try and keep your head out of it from time to time. Go and get other opinions. Go and hear what other people have to say. Look in on your organization from the outside, because that's what you will need to do as it grows. You will need to draw back and be the person who has the overview over the organization, not the one who's in there getting your sleeves rolled up and getting stuck in with everybody else. And I think there's a bit of an old-fashioned view around where people go, you lead a team by getting stuck in with them, and proving that you're capable of doing what they do. No, you need to do what you do. You need to be the leader. They need to do the, getting their sleeves rolled up bit. So I think that attitude needs to shift. So there's always two things for me. There's an attitude and a skill. The attitude is, realize that you are becoming the person with the overview. And then you need to acquire the skills of doing that instead of the skills you had for the startup stage. And all that requires a lot of self-knowledge and self-awareness in people. And in my book, how you get that is you go on courses and you get some coaching, and those are the things I would recommend.
Thank you very much, Kate. I think if not all, but at least many organizations need a Kate Mercer alongside them, isn't it, to make sure that everything is going to be as smooth as possible, and the shifts and the changes that they are aware of it, and they find out what these are and get the wheels running in the most effective way. The final question for you would be, if not if, but when people want to get in touch with you or find out more about you, what would be the easiest way? So if anybody's watching this or listening to this, how can they connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Okay, well, I'm on LinkedIn, Kate Mercer. My business is Leaders Lab. That is leaderslab.co.uk. And all my contact details are on my website or on my profile page on LinkedIn.
Make sure that we're going to leave all your details in all the description. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, that is going to be easy to do so as well. So thank you very much, Kate, for your insight, sharing your knowledge with us and telling us what you do, what your business is about. And hopefully people who are watching this or listening to this are going to find out more about you, and they want to get in touch with you to do more business with you, because from what I'm hearing, it is a very much needed element in many businesses. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Pasha.